Hey everyone, it's Rick. So my first ET experience was a spiritual one, and it happened in Chatham, Ontario in the 70s. So I was born in 68, so I was about 3 or 4 years old. You know the time when you just start to walk? When you're a kid, you just start walking and you start running around going crazy. That's when it happened. So at that time, so whatever age that is, I don't know, I remember I just started to walk and I was running everywhere. But anyway, so I lived on Indian Creek Road, Chatham, Ontario, and I forgot the address. In the backyard, we had like a slab of cement for a barbecue and lawn chairs and all that. Then we had about 20 feet of grass, and then there was a creek, Indian Creek, and I was either on our side of the creek, I think it was on the other side of the creek, there's this huge willow tree. Well, there was a bunch of willow trees, and they were like ancient old willow trees and huge. And I'm just saying because that's where the whole experience happens, around this willow tree. So one night I go to bed and I fall asleep just like every other night, and I'm laying in bed sleeping, and all of a sudden I wake up on my back, and I can see above the willow tree there's these 3 or 4 people saying hi to me, or I can feel them, but I can see them, and that's all I see. And I can see the willow tree, and I can see the people. Not really good. It was more like I could see it, but I don't know. I can't explain it at this point. I just see these people above the willow tree, and they're looking down at me, and I'm looking at them, and I feel like, hey, hi. They're glowing, and they're happy, and everybody's happy. And I go, oh, they came to see me. And so I jump out of bed, I throw back the covers, and I'm going to run outside. I'm going to run outside in the backyard to say hi to them, right? And as I'm throwing back the covers and getting ready to go, I hear a voice in my head say, if you go across that creek, we'll tell your mom and she's going to come and get you. And I'm like, oh, and I stopped. And they told me, they go, if you go across the creek, we'll tell your mom and she'll come and get you. Something like that. I think it was, yeah. No, she goes, I'm gonna spank your ass. That's what she said. That's what they said. We'll come and get you. And the reason I freaked out was because Mom always said, when you go in the backyard, don't go into the creek. Don't go on the other side of the creek, because on the other side of the creek was a golf course. And she goes, you'll make the golfers mad if you go across the creek, and you'll get all dirty and muddy, and I'm gonna have to, and she goes, you go across the creek, I'm gonna smack your ass. And I'm like, oh, right, I ain't going across the creek. She always said that, and that was the fear she put into me. So I never went across the creek. You know, I'd look at the snails and the fish and stuff, right? Play around, but that was it. I never went on the other side of the creek. And besides, my dog would pull me back every time. So I couldn't do nothing. So anyway, so I had that in my head. So I don't know if that was a factor or whatever happened, but I took it seriously, right? So I'm looking at these people above the willow tree, and I'm going, and I wasn't even going to go across the creek at the time. I was just getting out of bed. I was just going to go in the backyard and look up and say hi to them. And I'm on my way, and all of a sudden I hear, if you go across the creek, we'll come and get you. That's what they said, yeah. If you go across the street, we're going to come and get you. And all of a sudden I knew I was in trouble, right? Because Mom, I'm like, how the hell do they know? How do they know? How do they know what my mom said? And I thought, well, how do you know? I'm thinking, how do you know what my mom says? Right? And then I laid back down in bed, threw the covers over me, and I was all pissed off. And they were up there looking at me, and they sort of faded away. And I'm laying in bed all pissed off because Mom told them, you know, don't go across the creek, they're going to come get you. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Mom never told me she knew them, right? How do they know? That's what I'm thinking, laying in bed. And so I fell asleep. So the next day, I wake up in the morning, and this happened around, Mom and Dad were sleeping. I was, so it must have been late, like between 12 and 3, somewhere in there. And I woke up in the morning, and I'm starving. And so I ran into the kitchen. And my mom's got the Cheerios sitting on the table, and I'm like, let's go, come on, starving. She's on the phone doing the dishes, talking to Grandma. She's talking to Grandma on the phone, doing the dishes, and I'm like, Mom, feed. It's time to eat. Let's go. Like, give me some fucking milk and sugar. Like, she wouldn't let me touch the milk. So I filled the bowl up full of Cheerios, and I'm waiting. I'm like, come on. And I go, I'm gonna ask Mom. I go, about them guys. That was my whole thing. And so she gets off the phone with Grandma, and I'm eating my Cheerios, and I go, I'm gonna ask Mom about I go, hey Mom, and she goes, yeah, and I go, how do they know that I wasn't allowed to cross the creek? And she goes, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, those people that came last night, how do you know they were allowed to cross the creek? She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, but if you go across that creek, I'm going to spank your ass and you're never going to forget it. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm like, I couldn't word it. I didn't know who they were. All I knew is they weren't supposed to know about what Mom said about me crossing the creek. And it pissed me off real bad. And finally I got frustrated because I didn't have the words yet to tell her, to ask her, how do they know that I'm not allowed to go across the creek? And I kept trying to get it out, but she goes, don't even worry about whatever the hell you're talking about. You go across that creek and I'm going to spank your ass and you'll never forget it. And I'm like, son of a bitch. And I'm getting mad, right? So I just said, okay, fuck it. I can't even explain to Mom what I ask her, right? So I just dropped it. So after my Cheerios, I went outside with the dog, and I just sat. And I went outside, and I stopped, and I looked. I went down near the creek, and I looked at the top of the willow tree, and I go, they were right there. Right there above the tree, and there's nothing there. And I just sat, and I was in this like little duality world, right? Where I'm looking and I'm remembering what happened last night, and I'm going, they're there, but they're not there. How could they be up at the top of the willow tree? And I felt like I was living a lie, right? I couldn't explain it. It just felt like a lie. It was like two worlds, right? And I'm looking at the top of this willow tree, and I couldn't figure out how do they get up there and just stand in midair like that? These four people, they just standing there. When I saw them, they were just standing there. And so above this willow tree, and I couldn't figure it out. So I sat down with the dog, and the rest of the day I'm playing in the backyard, and I just get that feeling again, and I stop and I look up at the tree, and I'm going, and the feeling was driving me nuts because I couldn't understand it. It was like a lie. It was like my whole chest was feeling them staring at me all day long, off and on. And this lasted for like 3 days afterwards. And I go, and at one point I'm sitting in the backyard during the day, and I go, I'm not going to forget this. I got to remember this. I got to remember this because this means something. I don't know what it is, but so I told myself I got to remember this. because this means something. And that was pretty much it. And that feeling lasted for like 3 days. And it was like living a lie, because it's like it happened, but then I go outside and nothing makes sense. Mom didn't make sense. And how did Mom tell them? Because I didn't know she knew them. Do you understand? So it's like I wasn't dreaming, because I woke up and I'm seeing them. I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna go say hi. And then when I wake up in the morning, none of this is real, but I remember it, and I'm trying to bring it to Mom's attention to find out how she knows them, because she never told me about them, but yet they're saying the same thing she does. So I couldn't figure it out, and I had this duality feeling inside, like something happened, like that happened, yet it's not supposed to happen, but it did. So I don't know. But now, as I look back on it, they came down in the ship. I didn't even see no UFO or craft. I just saw the 4 guys standing in the sky looking at me. And they're pretty far away. Not like at the top of the tree. That's how far away they were. So I couldn't really get a great look at them. I only saw them for a few seconds, but more of it was more feeling than anything. So I knew it was a spiritual connection. Now I know it was a spiritual connection I was having from my spirit to their spirit, and they were talking spirit to spirit. But my brain, I didn't know how to add all this up, and that was the duality I was feeling, and that would happen again many times later on in life. So that was my first experience. It was a spiritual one. Nothing happened physically that I remember. And that was my first ET experience. And I know it was ET because I didn't remember this experience until in the 1990s in Vancouver. I had an experience at night, and after the experience, I remembered this event. And I never remembered this event in my whole life until that experience in Vancouver. That's how I remembered this event, because I had another experience that was pretty similar to it. So that's my first ET experience that I can remember.